Welcome back, everyone. So I was curious to know what you were thinking when you saw our tree image. At first, it looks a little overwhelming. There's a lot of detail, but part of what I'm wanting to do with these classes is show you how to edit a photo reference or something that's in front of you and then make it your own, because the goal is not to copy the picture or copy something that is there. You're using it as inspiration for your piece. So trees are really one of my favorite things to draw and paint, and especially draw because of all kind of the curves and the lines and the notches. And whenever I have a painting that somehow has a tree in it, I really get excited and can't wait to get to that part. So trees are easy to work with because they take a lot of the anxiety of getting things accurate and right out of the way. Because unlike a portrait, if you put a branch in another, or it's not, or if it's higher up or further down, you really don't. It's still going to look like a tree, given that you're doing all the other things. So it's a very forgiving subject. The only problem I find with people starting to draw trees is happen. First of all, we have the preconceived notion of what a tree looks like.
He is occupied.
Drawing it something like this, because as kids, that's one of the first things we draw, along with the house that has the triangle roof. So this is kind of just going a little bit too literal. So what I want you to do is I want you to totally forget everything you know about drawing a tree and kind of just follow with kind of the little tips and tricks, and also, you know, train yourself to trust your own eye. The other thing I see happening sometimes with trees is stiffness all around. I guarantee you that you will not find one straight line on a tree, even something like a birch tree. It's very hard to find a straight line. So along the lines of having the tree be too stiff, is that you can see here, everything is treated almost with the same type of line. When you think of a tree is heavy at the bottom. The older and bigger the tree, the heavier, shorter, thicker the trunk is going to be. So that's your base, and as the tree starts going up, it starts branching out. So you have the branches, and then those branches are going into smaller branches. And then they are going into almost like little stems, and then you have leaves. So the further away from the trunk you are, the softer your lines should become, because you're actually dealing with a slightly softer and newer structure. When you're doing the older part of the tree, that's where you want the heaviness of the lines, intensity of shadings. So whenever you're drawing something, you know, think about what it is and who it is. How old is it? Is it firm? Is it soft? Is it rough? Is it smooth? These are all things that, if you put yourself in that mindset, will really translate nicely onto your drawing. So the very first thing we want to do with this tree is we want to edit. The one thing I really liked about this reference is that it's not the whole tree. It's almost like part of a tree. It looks like it's a large tree, possibly, I think, a live oak. And it has the branches kind of framing the picture. So what I did is I did a marker outline to show you kind of what, I'm going to put it actually on the board. Okay. So what I did here is I took the larger branches, and so we kind of figure that the trunk is going to be somewhere here at the bottom, and we're kind of starting with the first immediate trunks that we have, and I kind of place them around to where they're almost like creating a design effect in my drawing. So I did this in marker just to show you how the layout could look. It doesn't have to be that precise. Anything that is beyond these very thick and heavy branches is kind of in the background and is going to be dealt with much softer. The other thing I wanted to do by showing you this marker drawing is we're going to be using almost like a circular kind of rounded hatching technique. And that is so much fun to do on trees because you're going in a rounded motion and it's really showing how the shape of the branches, you're going and showing how round they are, and then you can, you know, tighten these lines when you get to a groove, when you get to a notch. It's just really, really fun to work with. And the most important thing is not to treat it as a pattern and just really let the pencil kind of follow the lines and the little curves. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to do this, but in pencil. So I have my pencils here. I'm using colored pencils. We're not doing a full color, but I like, as usual, my brown and black to start with. And I thought what would be really cool for those of you that want to take it a notch further or want to add a little bit of color, I thought kind of like, okay, like a magenta, like a purple, and the burgundy. You know, anything between the reds and purples, I think that would be really pretty with the trunk, especially in all that wood. If you look closely at a tree trunk, especially the older ones, you're really going to start seeing almost these pinky, ashy colors that are just so beautiful. So that's an added something we could do. The first thing, though, we're going to create our basic outlines. So what you're going to see in your reference is that there's a lot of branches that overlap. So in the beginning, let them overlap and let the lines cross. We can bring what we want closer a little bit later, but make sure that you don't start too dark so that you can reverse some of these lines and still incorporate them in your picture. I'm going to go dark so you can see, but you don't have to go that dark. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the side of my pencil. And I'm using that because I want to create a tone, not a line. And a tone basically is almost like a shadow piece. And it's going to be a little bit looser and it's going to allow me to fix my work if I need to. So I am going to start at the bottom. And I see that there's a really big trunk. I'm just going to start with, so don't get drawn into the details at first. Make sure that okay, I just got a message that somebody can't open Zoom. So don't worry about the branches that are crossing in. Just make sure that you start with the larger part. So I'm going to go back to the other side of it. It's going to follow the lines, but it's not going to be exactly the same curves. The one thing you want to do is you want to be mindful of the distance between these inner lines and the outer lines. So make sure that you keep your eyes fixed on the subject. Okay, so now I have that big chunk of the trunk. I'm going to go to the other large one up here, and I'm looking at the distance between them. There's kind of a space that's called the negative space, and sometimes that's a good guide to use and look at that instead of the subject if the subject looks complicated. Okay, see, I'm kind of finishing it off because I don't want to get into detail before I have the bigger piece. And this is really cool because we have this branch that is going up. So again, I'm going to go back here. And see, I'm using the side, so I'm getting these nice soft tones, like a very soft line. And see, all of these branches are coming from the right, and they're going into your drawing plane, and they're going out of the picture. And compositions like these are very strong, and they kind of give a lot of movement and make you feel that you're going past the drawing. Then we have one more that kind of starts here. And I see a little bit of it here. And again, it does not have to be exact. Okay, so let's go back. So over here on this one, the trunk is kind of the part that connects the branches here is getting kind of thick. And then we've got one that is going this way. And then we see another one behind it. And typically, if you draw what you see, you can't go wrong with it. If it gets confusing, move to something that looks a little bit more clear. Everything in the end will make sense. I'm going to go back to my bottom one over here. So I have the lower line, the inner line of this one. And then this is like a fun one. And again, for this one, I'm looking at that space it's creating in between. And that's a really good use of negative space because it's helping me assess the angle of this branch. Okay. There's one that kind of comes out over here. Almost looks like an M. Whatever you can relate it to, and just see these curves that just go kind of everywhere. So much fun to work with. So I'm just going to darken this a little bit just to kind of show you how my composition looks so far. There's a nice little notch over here that I'm going to put. This will be fun to work with. And you do not need to do this step. I'm just going to do this so you can really see what this is looking like. And while I do this, I'm trying to see if there's anything else. I kind of like this one. There's a little branch over here. I'm just going to do it lightly because it's not one of the main ones. It's in the background. It's just kind of supporting my drawing. Okay, let's go back up here. Again, just really enjoy all of those little grooves. You see a notch, just put it in. Okay. This one needs a little bit of separating. I feel that it's a little bit heavy here, so I'm going to kind of ignore that and turn it into something else. Okay, so I would like to take just a quick look at your start. Make sure that everyone is using loose lines. Make sure that you are doing wavy and curved lines. Let's see what we got. If you can put it up. It's hard to see. They're a little bit light at this point. Okay. 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 Okay, so everyone good? Okay, we'll continue. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to identify some of the darker areas. And I'm going to use the side of the pencil, and I'm just going to do some really soft shading. And then we're going to start doing the hatching and that kind of circular type shading. So the reason I'm doing this is that it's just going to help bring some parts further up, and it's going to give me the depth that I need to see how it's working. So I'm going to look at the darkest areas, and I can see that this trunk has, the lower part of it has a shadow. So again, I'm using the side of my pencil. Don't go too hard because this is just like a layer underneath. It's like an added layer that is going to really enhance the three-dimensional quality of your drawing. And as I go here, I'm actually kind of just reworking this area, and I'm making it just a little bit more curved. Okay, so notice the branches have one side of them that is lit and one that has shadows. And that's because the light is coming from the top. So what this is actually doing, this is making everything a little bit more clear to me. And you can see, even just with the little bit that we did, it's already giving it a lot of three-dimensional quality. So I'm going to go to this one over here. You can see the shadows. Again, side of your pencil, just really soft. Almost just like you're brushing it with a little dark wash. And one thing when you do this is when you're getting to the upper part over here, just kind of go a little bit less strong. The deeper shading should be towards the bottom because that's where it's darker. And while you do that, if you see a branch that you want to add, you can do that. Okay, so these are going to be a lot of fun, the ones that kind of twist around. And I'm just going to show you that if you look for those shadows and you put them in, it's immediately going to show how the curve is happening and how the twist is going around. So I'm seeing the shadows starting here. And they go, and as you do that, shape anything that you feel needs extra shaping. And notice that over here, kind of that dark shading stopped in the front of it. There's a little bit on this side. Continuing, and then the shadow kind of starts, it just kind of creeps up a little bit over here, and then it stops. And then over here, it's starting to get darker. Okay, so you can see how this already is showing that there is a twist. So I'm gonna go back, just define this a little bit more. I'm gonna make this just a little bit lower. Just kind of face that off a little bit. This is over here is where it gets really dark. You see how three-dimensional that looks? Okay, this one over here seems to almost be in silhouette form, so I'm just gonna and in some of the lighter parts, there's texturing, and I think that's kind of moss that's there, and we can add that later, and we won't do it as part of the texture that we're doing on the tree. Let's go to the far upper right one. And let your hand go heavier, harder, where you see it getting darker. So every time you add shading or you add any kind of texturing, make sure that you're going in the direction of the shape you're working on. So make sure that you don't just fill it in, and that will help give a lot more three-dimensional quality. I'm gonna put in some of those stronger, kind of these darker silhouette branches in the back. And again, this is where you edit and just kind of pick and choose where you want them to be. I think it's cool when you kind of make them like they cross over through the picture, and you can see that the branches are getting thinner up here. These are more in the distance. I'm gonna give this one a little bit of shading. And just make sure that you don't make them too heavy, because your star really are these three very heavy branches that probably just came out of the trunk that we're assuming is over here. Okay, see, this looks a little bit darker. Okay, so just do one more scan and kind of see where you have your darkest areas. And just go over them one more time. And the branches can get confusing. Sometimes you're like, which branch was that? I can't remember. And it really doesn't matter, because it's still gonna look like a tree. My hair was that way. Just gonna add some light, and see I'm really moving my pencil just very lightly. You see the bunch of leaves over here? It almost just look like squiggles, so that's like kind of just what I'm doing. And these are a nice space filler over here. Okay, and see how everyone's doing? Okay. Very nice, Mira. Beautiful. Nice pen.
Can you just go over the leaves again?
Yeah, I'm gonna go over them with more detail. I just saw them and I just put them, but that's gonna be a whole section. Melissa, that's good. Hi, Alina. Looks nice. Okay, does anyone have any questions? So I know Nuera was asking about the leaves. I'm gonna get back to that. Any questions about the branches, what we've done with the dark shading, just defining areas? Any questions about that? Are we all good? Okay. So why don't we take a few minutes to look at it? I want you to look at it and see if there's anything that looks awkward to you. If one of the branches looks, you know, too thick, too wide, even if you felt that you were following what you saw in the picture, you know, in the end, you are the boss of this drawing. So if it doesn't look right, if something looks too thick, you know, you can turn it in. To me, I feel that this part over here just looks a little kind of clunky. So I think I'm gonna give it a little bit more shape. So I'm going back here. I kind of took off this part, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna turn it into a branch. Okay, so you see that little change that I did.
Noelle, I have a question.
Yes.
You know, the picture is very dark.
Yes.
But you're making, is there any reason you're making much lighter?
Well, it's much lighter because I haven't finished it.
You have what?
It's much lighter right now because it's still in the early stages.
Oh, because I'm in the habit of imitating exactly what I see on the papers.
Yeah,
you know, so if it's dark, it's going to be dark on my paper. Is that okay?
Well, the thing is, it's up to you to edit. You know, if you like it to be dark, then you can go ahead and do dark. But the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to go dark at the very beginning because then you limit yourself. And I know you sometimes do that, and then you get to a point where you stop because you can't give your darker areas any more darkness. So make sure that.
Can I show you what I did so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it looks good. It's very dark.
Yeah, it's very dark because I have this habit of, imitating the picture,
Yeah.
But it's okay. I understand that you want to build up yours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I think yours looks good. The only problem with going dark in the first few minutes is it doesn't allow you to build on it.
Okay.
So from this point further, if you're going to add any more branches, just make sure that you build them, because even if they're going to be darker at the end, if your dark tones are built gradually and they're layered, they're going to look much stronger and they're going to look a lot more three-dimensional. But there's nothing wrong with working dark.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Anyone else? Anything? We're all good? Looks good, Lucia. Very nice. Anyone else want to show me? Susanna? Beautiful. Wow, beautiful texturing. Sharon, looks good. And by the way, this is also a nice subject to do with ink and pen because it can give you a lot of just those little notches. They're fun to work with. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start doing hatching, and the hatching is basically shading with lines. And because we have an object that is organic and that goes around like almost like a cylinder, we're going to go with very rounded strokes. So you want to imagine that you are, let me go back to my view. You want to imagine that your lines are going to wrap around and around. Almost imagine like you're holding a string or a rope and you're going to be going around your drawing, around your tree.
So the first time, Noelle, the first time you shaded, kind of I was drawing, I wasn't paying attention, I guess. You shaded just slightly to make it more round, is that it?
Now?
Yeah, the first, I see shading, but I don't know what you did exactly.
No, I didn't do anything now. It was just air drawing.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to take, actually, I'm going to take another color. And I'm going to use this burgundy. The reason is because I want you to see kind of how this is going to look. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I am going to, see, I'm going in a rounded motion. Okay. And now I'm going to move up to this branch. See, imagine like they would go around to the other side. Go in different directions, and sometimes they're going to cross. And when they cross, you're gonna get that cool, darker area. So I'm gonna go up here. They don't have to follow exactly the same order. I'm getting some cross over here. If you have a notch, make sure that you see how it's showing the texture of the tree. Isn't that fun? And also, make sure when you do this, don't just blindly start doing the lines. Make sure that you are shaping and you're contouring and you're fixing areas that, like this one over here, this little notch, I'm taking my lines a little bit further and turning them into a swirl. And make sure that you don't lose the momentum of what areas are darker. So the bottom part of most of these trunks is darker, so I'm going to go with more than one line in the dark areas. I'm going to go a little bit lighter at the top. So the closer the lines are, the darker the area is going to appear, and that's how you achieve tones. See over here, this is an area. Anytime you see an area that looks like it has tension, like something is close to it, stuck to it, branching out of it, you're gonna have like a stress area, like a tension area. Make sure that you go darker. If there's a curve, you're going to go darker. If there's a shadow, you're gonna go darker. And you know, don't overthink these lines. Make sure that you're going from one end to the other. Sometimes just do smaller ones, do bigger ones. Sharpen my pencil. And make sure that you still look at your reference when you do it. Because every time you touch your drawing, you want to improve on it. There's a nice little knot over here. So when you get to those knots, what you can do is you can go in, like do take those lines and just turn them into a little circle. So now I'm going to alternate between that and the black to make sure that the black is included. And I'm going to put that in. And again, if you're working with one color, that's fine. It just, I think, for you to kind of see the effect of this type of shading, it might be easier to see it when I'm using color. So again, make sure that you still honor the fact that some areas are dark, some are light. When you get over here to where they cross, you know, just decide which side is more dominant, and you can just kind of go into that direction. And then over here, you can just whenever I'm seeing that there's some dark areas, I'm going to take the black. You see, lift those lines. And these will get better with practice, because you will start, you know, when you're first doing that, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go from this side to that side. I'm going to do this. And you're trying to just mind all the things that you want to mind while you're drawing. But with more practice, it'll become a lot more spontaneous, and the lines will become stronger. And then over here, there's a nice little, looks like a hole that a squirrel might live in. So again, I'm taking the lines and then going like spiral. Work a little bit on that, and then I will show you how to make the leaves. And ideally, when you're painting or drawing, you do want to give yourself breaks, you know, step away from it. Another thing I like to do is I like to take pictures of the work in progress, and that way I can take my phone or my iPad away from where I am and just kind of see it in a different context, being able to see it from a distance. When you're viewing it smaller, you're actually able to see if something does not look right. The more precise your subject is, the more important it is to check those things and step away from the work itself. So remember, when you're doing this, you don't necessarily have to have everything shaded in. There's sometimes a lot of beauty with just, you know, selecting certain areas to work with and highlight. And instead of going darker in the areas that need to be darker, just put your lines closer together. And that will help really show that there's a groove there. Darkness. I'm just kind of working on some of the ones that are in the background. And again, notice the ones in the background I'm treating in a totally different manner. A lot lighter, looser, not that complete. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to work on the leaves. The leaves that we have here are kind of in the distance, which I think is even better because we're not seeing them very clearly. And you have to remember that when your eye is looking at a tree, you're not actually seeing every single leaf. You're seeing them in groups. So typically what you would see in a tree is you would see clusters of leaves. On any tree, you would see bunches of them kind of around the tree, okay? So that's the first thing you want to do, is you want to think of the leaves as an area. So I'm going to go into some of the clusters that I'm seeing over here. Now I'm going to do this in a different color so you can see a little bit of a rainbow painting, but I want to do that so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm seeing two main clusters. There's one here and there's one here. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to just give it a light shading, just, and make sure that it's a very kind of no hard edges on this one. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some of the branches that I'm seeing that are holding them together. And I can see there's one branch coming like this. And remember, when you first draw something, it might not make sense or look like it belongs, but as you build on it, it's going to start imposing itself in the drawing, and it's going to start working itself in with everything else that you have. Because you're building, it's gradual. So again, these branches they're thinner, they're lighter. A, because they're far away from me, B, because they are a newer growth. So to show some texture and shape in the leaves, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do basically like a doodle, okay? So I'm going to look at the two clusters and I'm going to see where is there the biggest tangle. So I'm just doodling. I'm going to just do these lines.
What color are you using, Noelle?
Black.
For doodle? Brown?
I'm using the black. And what I'm doing a stronger doodle where I see them more tangled. And as they go out, I'm just going to keep my doodles loose. So basically like little squiggles. And then over here. And remember that mass that I put, the bunch, it's just to kind of show me the area. I don't need to stick with it. You want to go past it. And as you want to think as they're going to be trailing off. So I'm doing my squiggles, and then they're going to kind of just vanish. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this a little bit closer. So you can see. So that's kind of what they're looking like. Okay, we can do some of the ones on top here again. And don't just go, just doing continuous squiggles. Just see where they are. See up here, they're starting to fade. So go lighter, 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 lighter until your lines kind of disappear. And make sure that you keep a very loose grip. You're doing something that's very light and very airy. Even, just kind of hold your pencil in a funky way where it won't let you do a lot of detail. That sometimes is, see, I'm just kind of just letting the pencil, even I sometimes use, my other hand just to give it less thought. Also because sometimes my arm gets tired. See, I'm just moving my pencil around. Okay, we can do some of the ones over here. Again, I'm just gonna do the green to show you my cluster. There's one cluster here. Again, keep this very loose. No hard edges. There's a cluster here. And the next thing you're looking at trees, the next time you're looking at trees, I want you to look at the tree and see what I'm talking about with the clusters, because that's how they are. They're not just all kind of in a net. They are all gathered in bunches that come from a branch, and then some of them are going to be further out. They're going to be lighter. There's ones that are going to be tucked in, and they're going to be darker, and that's how you start breaking down that surface. Looking at this cluster here, little cluster here, and I'm going to take the other color, and again I'm doing my squiggles, and where I see them getting lighter, I'm going to go lighter, and I'm going to trail my squiggles off. Remember, the more squiggled closely together your lines are, the darker the area is going to appear. So if you want to show darkness, just go with more squiggles. You want less, go with looser, wider, and let them trail off. I'm going to put some of those branches in here. And typically the branches will kind of, they will fade in with the leaves because the leaves are over the branch. So I was talking about the Spanish moss that is on the tree, or that's what I'm assuming that it is. And I'm going to just do, and it almost looks like foggy little drops or something. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do kind of like irregular circles. Here, let me bring that a little bit closer. I'm just doing like these little circles. And again, you know, there's so many different things you can do with line shading. I mean, you can, a lot of this stuff is kind of, I have names for them. I don't know if that's the actual name for, you know, squiggling or swirling, but I feel that they work. The main guide and rule with using line shading is that the closer your lines are together, the darker the area is going to look. Always feel your subject and try to imagine what it feels like. Is it hard, soft, dark? Is it near? Is it far? And make sure that you work, you know, accordingly by loosening and softening your hand. So I'm just doing these little irregular little circles. Oops. So these circles are going to get smaller and smaller until they kind of become little dots. So see, they're giving me the feeling of the moss. Kind of like just different shapes, circles. They're closer together. It's going to look more clustered. I'm going to take some of them over here. I'm even going to incorporate some of them into the leaves. And it's kind of nice to connect all different parts. I'm going to put some of them into the trunk. Just going to have some of them look like the moss is trailing off. There's a whole bunch of it over here. So again, just to remind you, if you want to go back and visit this class, it is available online. I think it's put like a couple days after we do the class, so you can always go to it on YouTube. If you need the information, just email me, let me know, and that way you can see how specific things were done. You know, just remember that in every class, I'm almost giving you like, you know, a 4-month course of things that you could be working on. I just want to give you a lot so you can have a lot to think about and a lot to work with. All of these techniques take practice. All of them take time to know how to use them, manipulate them. And just remember that putting your own touch is going to come with practice, and it's going to come with confidence. Just focus on really getting your tools to work for you, getting your eye to recognize soft, hard edges, being able to look at a picture and being able to see a shape and design. These are the most important things. Observe, always look around you, even if you're like waiting at a doctor's office or doing something boring. Just look at shapes, look at light and shadows, look at color, look at how edges blur, how edges are defined. This is all stuff that can really help with your work. So if I could take a final peek and see if anyone has any questions.
I'm just slow.
Yeah, it's I mean, this one can go on for quite some time. Looks good. Melissa looks good. Nuero Shadden. Show me. Nice, very nice. Shadden. Ooh, cool. Sharon. Very nice, good. Pam, I can't see you clearly. Okay, nice. Edie, can you show me? A little bit higher up. What beautiful, very nice. Lucia,
Okay.
are you gonna show me?
Can you see?
Yeah, I can see it now. Nice, good. Do you like the kind of that hatching?
Yeah.
That's also fun to do with ink. Exactly that technique.
Right. I thought for sure we're gonna do the ink. For some reason, I thought.
Well, now that things are, you know, more accessibility, we will do ink. I just don't want to.
I like the colored pencil. I never used colored pencils like that. So for me, this is the first time, and it's kind of fun.
It's kind of nice when you use them as, you know, just like an added color.
Right.
You know, I think it keeps the kind of integrity of just a simple sketch instead of doing it full color.
Unfortunately, I don't have any black. I don't know what happened to my black, so I can't really emphasize.
You buy them separately.
Yep, that's what I need to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, Susanna? Oh, beautiful. Wow. That is really beautiful. Just that, you know, and also to me, trees look like people. They look like dancing people. I think they're just so fun to work with. That looks beautiful. Really good. And I see your little cardinal behind you. He looks great. Who else? Carol. Oh, nice, Carol. Carol, that is beautiful. So I have to tell you, Carol does beautiful portraits, and that's her thing. It's like portraits are the hardest thing to do, and then you give her something like a box, and she gets all frustrated. And so I'm just so happy to see you enjoying, you know, all these other things and realizing that what you actually do so effortlessly is much harder than this. So I'm really glad and she's doing a lot of cool ink stuff. Oh, Phyllis, you managed to join? Phyllis? I can't hear you. Okay, so any,
Maybe everybody should unmute themselves at this point.
I don't, we're still figuring it out.
I'm having a really hard time with unmuting people today. I don't know what's going on. It won't let me. But I just unmuted everyone, so
Yeah,
I don't know what.
Yeah, but some of us muted ourselves, so we have to go
the
back.
world is like mine last week of school. It's kind of, it's everything mayhem right now. So also, if you have any suggestions of subjects you would like us to explore, I will take them into consideration. I know one of the things we do want to work on, and I was emailing back and forth with Sharon, is we're going to work on clouds in watercolor. Because when you do landscapes, and for those of you that, I know my sister also likes to do landscapes, you know, the clouds are the backdrop of the painting, and they are a little tricky. They could easily look like weird monsters or look like marshmallows. So we are going to do that with watercolor maybe next week or the next session. We are going to do roses, and the great thing about doing it online is that you can hide feet, but we are going to do them. We are going to tackle that.
I like how Susanna put a background to her cardinal.
I know. Can you bring that up?
Can we see that closer,
The background?
Susanna? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yours.
Sir, your bird.
Because I wanted to do that with mine, especially I got it all ready and then my dirty water got spilled over part of it.
It
Oh,
had,
that's beautiful.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
nice.
and she did some really cool text. Yeah. Really nice. I think Susanna could have been a framer in another life, because every time she does something, she puts this beautiful frame around it, even if it's like drawn out. So
I have to.
that is great. So this was fun. Please send me pictures. I love seeing what you're doing, whether it's continuation of this or anything else. And I know my niece did like a variation on the birds. She did a bluebird and then some others that she hasn't shown me yet. So I just think it's always cool when, you know, you find something that you really connect with and work on it. And just, you know, hit me up with questions or anything that you need.